Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is Rick MacPherson, talking from Midwest Energy Emissions Corp. Welcome to our presentation today, and I welcome questions after the presentation, should you have any. Midwest Energy Emissions Corp, our position at this point is reaffirming our position across the U.S. coal-fired power fleet. We've been in business since 2008. The legal disclosure slide, of course, for those of you who have not read it, will be available during and after the presentation. Moving on to the information of the presentation itself, I'll give some background of the company and let you know who we are and what we do. So Midwest Energy Emissions Corp, we're a leading environmental technology company, and we deliver patented solutions. We have been doing so commercially since 2011. Our patented process is called SEA, Sorbent Enhancing Additive, and it's used in the capture of mercury at coal-fired power plants. It's been adopted by almost half of all of the coal-fired plants across the U.S., as well as some plants in Canada. The SEA provides numerous, what we call ESG benefits, not seen with other technologies that are used to capture mercury. We use less product and we capture mercury more efficiently. We maintain the quality of the byproducts for beneficial use, such as fly ash, which is very important from an environmental point of view and also from an economic point of view with the plants themselves. Much better to be able to sell the material and have it used proactively in the cement industry and others, rather than have to landfill it in the back 40. So we're very pleased that we're able to help in that environmental control effort and help create value to the power plants for this valuable byproduct. We're traded on the OTC, a QB company. The share price that's listed in the presentation was put up there about a week ago, 66 cents. We traded above 80 cents yesterday and closed just shy of 80 cents. The market cap as well has moved up to just shy of 67 million just in the last week. We are going to be having a presentation, a full market presentation, Wednesday next week. The press release just went out about 15 minutes ago. And at that time, I will also be able to update our cash position and also any new significant developments that have been happening that I need to make known throughout the entire market. So we will be having a complete earnings call type call next week, and I will be getting into a great deal of additional detail about who we are, what we're doing, and where we're going. Keeping with this presentation today, however, the key highlights are that we have a very large addressable market. This 45% of adoption of our technologies means that we have a great bit of opportunity in front of us as we monetize that adoption that has already taken place. We're going to do that by enforcing our patent position on the technologies. We started in on that effort in the summer of 2019, and I'd like to bring you up to speed on where we are with that right now, because we've just finished press releasing the results. We started back in 2019 by filing claim against 4 major coal-fired power utilities. And I'm pleased to say that we have settled with all of them. And each and every one of them now have acquired a license from us to continue operating our patented technologies going forward. We've also put ourselves in a position where we are in a very good spot in terms of vying for their supply side business. And we're actively out there testing at some of the companies that we have settled with at their plants as we speak. So the actual supply side fundamental growth of the company, we're going to be reporting on next week in our call as well. So just to reiterate that key point, We have settled with all of the 4 major utilities that we initially filed suit against. They all have licenses, and all of the challenges to our patents have been retired. We're just waiting for final word from the Patent Office with regards to those filings being registered at the Patent Office. So as a company, we have a very high margin reoccurring revenue model. The patent license agreements and or the recurring revenue supply agreements will position our company to a return of very substantial growth, we feel. We have a stable customer base over the medium and the long term. The coal-fired plants will continue to play a vital role for the foreseeable future in the production of power for the country. It's actually expected, according to EIA, that we will actually see an increase this year in the percentage of coal-fired plants penetration into the fleet itself. So going approximately from 21 to 23% of the total energy consumed in the U.S. is expected to be the coal-fired position. That creates a very large market of opportunity for us going forward. And also we expect it to be very stable in spite of the war on fossil fuels. The necessity of that core base, we feel, is very real. Moving on to the next slide. This describes our technologies completely. It is, however, enough, I think, at this point to say that it has great pedigree, a very large suite of patents, both issued and pending, came out of the Energy Environment Research Center, whom I started working with in 2006. And since then, and the commercialization, the full rollout and adoption, as I mentioned, is around 44% of the entire coal-fired fleet. So that, I guess, is as good a statement as any as to the validity of the technologies. And I can just make note again that, our recent wins in securing licenses from the first major 4 utilities that we laid claim against, I think is proof as well to the acceptance of our position with regards to our patented technologies. So the defense of the intellectual property and the market opportunity that created is extremely significant. And so the developments in the IP lawsuit have been very significant. And we're also focused on a business-first approach. So our approach as a company was that we were very happy that people had adopted our technologies. But from a shareholder position, we wanted to make sure that that value was felt by the shareholders. So we realized in 2017 we needed to reposition ourselves. And then in 2019, when we were completely repositioned, we moved forward and laid claim to the position that we felt we deserved, which was to be able to monetize all of this adoption that had taken place. So where we are right now with the first 4 major firms having taken licenses is that we will be now looking at the rest of the field and try to figure where we go next. There's still, over 2/3 of the folks that have adopted this technology utilizing it every day to stay in compliance without a license to operate from us. So we'll be addressing that, and I'll speak more to that in the call next week. We use a law firm, Caldwell Cassidy Curry, extremely successful and competent group out of Dallas, Texas. They've been leading the charge, and they've been doing it in a very reasonable fashion from a cost point of view. So we have an arrangement with them that matches our business-first approach. We very much expect and are moving forward along the same lines as we have with the first 4 settlements, with an approach which is trying to have our firm handle all the supply side for the folks that are using our patented technologies. And we very much feel that's the best way forward for both the enterprise value of our company and our shareholders, and for the folks that are using our technology as well, technologies. So we'll be moving forward with that throughout the year and reporting back to the market as we continue to move through the field. And so very much expect to have a very good year because of that. And we'll speak more to that definitively in the call next week. Again, with regards to potential market share, this slide basically breaks down some of the details. There are over 200 units using our technology. Probably about a quarter of those have been covered with the first 4 settlements. But we also see a very stable, as I mentioned, coal-fired market going forward. And we very much feel that we'll be a part of that continued growth as we go forward through the year. With regards to projected revenue assumptions, we have not given any guidance at this point. What we have done is given estimates of the value of the patented technologies that we have that have been adopted. But I have rolled out some expectations of recovery on the patent side in 2020, 2021, and 2022. And we very much expect that the majority of the folks using our technologies will come to the table in 2021, and that the remainder would in 2022. So that we very much expect we will be able to ramp the company up nicely through 2021. When I think back to 2016, we finished that year off with just under 33 million in revenue. The stock reached into the $1.83 range, and we were moving along very nicely prior to what we would consider fairly widespread infringement. And so we very much expect to get back on that route of development, and the first 4 settlements would surely indicate that that's quite possible. So we're looking forward to moving through 2021 month by month, and I'll speak more specifically to this, as I mentioned, next week's call. With regards to potential, having looked at it in terms of the amount of generation that's out there, that's being also fortified by our technologies for mercury mitigation. These are the numbers in the slide that give us a sense of what the potential value for the company is going forward on this core business. So we see the potential for 47 million in 2021. A combination of licensing and supply side would generate 23 million. Either way, those revenues would generate approximately 11 million of cash to the bottom line, and that is net of all legal expenses and operating costs. We expect in 2022, as I've predicted in terms of potential, that the potential there would be 74 million. Licensing only revenue would be 38 million, with 22 million dropping to the bottom line. And it ramps up in year 3 once we've addressed all of the what we would consider infringing market to over 100 million in gross revenue from a supply side point of view, dropping down to 64 million in a combination of supply side and licensing, with 40 million dropping in cash to the bottom line. We see that level of opportunity carrying on for the near future through 2025, and without any major changes for the next 10 years. So we have a very big opportunity in front of us. We're taking advantage of it and looking forward to reporting to the market on a month-to-month basis as we go forward with regards to the fundamental growth that we're achieving. What's interesting, folks, is that in 2016, when we were ramping up and folks were only using our system through us, we put a facility in place that was able to handle over $100 million a year of supply side. That's what we expected. That's what we were moving towards. And that's, what the potential is today. So this new facility, which is on the screen, is a custom-made facility which allows us to produce extremely competitive product mix that will ensure that once we get to a plant to secure that supply side, we not only have the capacity to do so, but we have the specificity in order to be able to make sure that we have the very best products available, and in a lot of cases, customized products that can't be bought from our competitors. This is fully paid for. And so as we speak of growth numbers, I want the market to understand that does not necessarily include any huge capital costs to do so. We expect going forward that we will have very good margins, very good returns for our shareholders. And as we move into 2021, we take enough base business with us to cover all of our operating costs. So some of the key takeaways, as I mentioned, we have this large addressable market, which is already in place. We do not have a sales force. We do not need one. Our technologies were introduced many years ago and are fully adopted. The numbers that I've shown you as potential are there for us to acquire, and we're moving forward, I would say very successfully in our efforts to do that. The litigation momentum is in place, and we see a possible domino effect through the rest of the folks using our technologies, and very much we'll be working with Caldwell Cassidy Curry to bring options to those folks that make sense to them from an operating point of view as well. As the inventors of the technologies, we, in most cases, can provide options for them that will enhance their operations, improve the efficiencies, improve opacity and other side effects to the point where it could very much be a win-win once we finally get to the plant to show them what we do. Our margin, our revenue model is a reoccurring high margin revenue model, and we'll be looking at either patent licenses or reoccurring product supply agreements to make sure that we're put into a very strong growth curve over the next few years. We do have a stable customer base in the medium term. Our past customers are very loyal. The core clients that we bring into the year are solid clients we've had for years. And as I mentioned, we do very much expect that the coal-fired fleet will continue for the foreseeable future to generate a significant portion of the grid's energy. I think the value recognition, our organic growth path in 2021 will lead us to an uplisting to a major exchange. We'll very much be looking forward to that, and I will speak to that in detail during our call next week. The leadership team is on your screen, and what I'd like to do at this point in time is take questions. If anybody has any questions, Michael, perhaps we could start into that at this time.
Thank you. Yeah, glad to do that. And if anybody does have questions, there's a little bubble button on the lower right. Just click on that, send them in, and I'll forward them to Rick. But I'm going to start out with a couple of my own. I got to maybe start out by saying, boy, when I first looked at this and you're a coal company and your revenues have declined and you're burning through some cash, I'm thinking, you know, why is this one an interest? But you've done a good job of talking about the litigation, some of the areas, and really showing how this could be a company that could see some pretty significant growth here in the next couple of years. I want to kind of think of your customers in maybe three categories. The ones that have signed up for your license and or have settled litigation, the ones that are potentially are using the two-stage but and could be potential settlements, and then the other 56% you talk about that are using other technologies. So let me start about with the existing customers, existing license. And first of all, out of that 44% that are using the two-stage technology, how much is that is ones that are officially licensed, and how much are using the technology that may be facing a lawsuit?
Sure. So good question. Thank you, Michael. About 5% of the folks using the technology are now licensed by Midwest, other than the new arrangements we have with those major first four. And we addressed four major corporations out of the gate in order to be able to set a standard for the industry. Those four account for about 25 to 30% of the infringing operations across the country. So we're very pleased to be able to bring those in and get them licensed. Moving forward, our core business will bring us a significant amount of business in 2021 prior to any of the license revenue or new supply side agreements from these four settlements, to the point where they will provide profitability for the company. So we go into the year very strong, working with these four major groups and expecting, as I mentioned in the presentation, that we have an upside potential in the mid 40 million range this year. How successful we are in attaining that will depend in a large part on the results of the testing that we'll be doing going forward at the plants that are run by these utilities, and also our next level of communication with folks that are using the technologies without a license from us at this point to do so.
We've got our first question from the audience, and it dovetails perfectly with the next question I was going to ask. Someone asked, do you receive upfront payments from any of the four companies that came to agreement? And I was going to ask about the existing license, how that's structured. Is it more licensing ongoing payment type things, or is there a bigger upfront fee with the license? So kind of just, I guess, in general, talk about the timing of payments for people who have signed on either through settling a lawsuit or buying your product outright.
Sure. So I would love to get into the details. Very pleased with the details of the settlements, but unfortunately I'm not permitted under the terms of these settlements to discuss those in any detail. What I can say is that we're very much encouraged by the deal put together. We think they will lead to significant growth for the company over the next few years, this year in particular. And as I mentioned earlier, I'm looking forward to reporting back to the market on a regular basis with regards to the fundamental growth of the supply side of the company. And then on a quarterly basis, investors will be able to see our cash on hand numbers and get a sense and an idea of how these are working out for us in real terms, quarter to quarter. Next week, I will be, I'm hoping, and have it in front of the attorneys to see whether I can or not, but I would like to be able to give an update on our cash position. That is something that I'd like to be able to report on, and that compared to the Q3 number would give folks an idea of where we are and where we're going with these settlements.
Without speaking too specifically, can you speak in general terms? Your projections certainly show a pretty steady level of revenue. So I'm assuming from that the payments are more of an annual licensing payment than an upfront fee.
Again, without getting into any of the specifics, the projections and the reason the projections are as they are meant to give a clear understanding of the opportunity. The agreements that we've described with regards to settlements clearly show that opportunity is actively in play with the settlements, but we've yet to give guidance on exactly what we expect, nor can I give any specifics as to which of the folks that we settle with will generate X dollars. I have to rely on our quarterly business announcement and monthly new contract announcements to get that through to the market. Once I get a good sense of the conversion of the agreements into real world supply side agreements and what the percentage is that we'll be using between license fees and supply side, then I'll be in a position to give some hard projections in terms of revenue. But unfortunately, Michael, it wouldn't be fair for me to make projections right now other than give the opportunity statements that I have and let folks make their own decisions. When we get to firm guidance, which I would like to get to as soon as possible, I think folks will be very pleased with the numbers that we share.
Okay. We've got a couple questions in, and they're both kind of on the same topic, and that's talking about your water treatment technology. We haven't, something that really wasn't discussed here. Can you go into little details on that?
Sure. And just, in broad stroke, we made a soft announcement about 2 years ago that we started working directly with another firm that had been extremely successful in the initial development stages of technologies that are meant to be used in the remediation efforts. So what we've done is we've made sure that that was an effort that we continued developing. And next week in the presentation I'll be making, we will go more in depth on what that really means. What I've positioned the company, what we've commissioned the company to be, is a firm that's an environmental technology company with a great deal of strength through our technology know-how to be able to improve the fossil fuel industry in particular, both in its environmental operations today, but also to be able to help remediate and add value to any and all operations that are either on a path of being phased out or continued operation. So we're going to be in a position to be able to maximize value in the fossil fuel industry, again, whether it's expanding, staying where it is, or being minimized somewhat. And I think that's exciting. I think it's a real true value statement on our abilities. And I look forward to bringing some more information to the market next week, and then expanding on that fully as we go through the first quarter.
Another question is one I was going to ask later, and that's just what about international? That seems like a natural thing as you talk about you got the game plan for the next 5-10 years or so, but then we have to deal with what happens after that, and international would sure seem like it would make sense to me.
Yeah, Michael, international is very strong, but it's in the development stages right now. The Minamatter core is significant. You're looking probably at about a 5-year rollout to get active in those industries. In those countries. We receive requests to join in testing in a number of those different countries. We'll actually be participating in something within Indonesia this week. I have had people actively on the ground in Southeast Asia for the past 2 years, and we're moving forward with a licensing model in mind, being able to take our technologies, explain and work with entities in Southeast Asia, licensing them and putting joint ventures in place so that we could maximize the value for shareholders in those markets. They're huge markets, huge opportunities, and I think that we should be able to move something forward in about a 5-year period that adds a huge amount of longer-term value to the company.
I'm not an engineer, so as they say, explain it to me like I'm a first grader, but I guess the question is, how individualized is this process? When you go into a plant, are they standard enough that you're using a set amount of equipment, or is there a lot of time and setup with each individual plant?
All of the plants, all of the opportunity that we're looking at today and describing for you is already set up to handle our supply side versus what they're using now. There would be zero capital expenditure required. And again, we're not looking to create new business here for the industry. We're looking to be able to supply those folks that are using our technology but not our materials. So very little, if any, capital requirement to change to our operation. And also on our side, with that huge batch plant already built and in place in Texarkana, we're ready to start supplying to that full operating portion of the fleet today.
So let's talk a little bit about the people who have not adopted your technology. You know, they've put in scrubbers, whatever. They've done what they needed to meet the MATS requirement. Have they already done their big capital expenditure? Would they really be willing to switch over technology, or are they getting at the point where we've done our spending, we're not going to put more money into it if the plant's going to be closing in 5, 10, 20, 30 years anyways?
Yeah, no, we're not even including them in that 44%. We very much recognize that they have the capacity to look after mercury from a structural point of view. So we're not even looking at that part of the industry. There's no need to at this point. If we can ramp up to that, 100 million potential or a big piece of it, then we'll be extremely successful as a company. We'll have created tremendous enterprise value, and I think we'll have done a great job creating that core business that will underpin all of the other diversification efforts that we will be moving into, that I'll be describing to the market later in the quarter.
So that 100 million is only coming from existing licensings and or assumptions regarding litigation?
That's correct.
Okay. Well, let's talk about the litigation. What's the biggest roadblock there? You're dealing with utilities. I used to follow utilities. You're dealing with companies that are on a cost recovery type of system. What's the involvement with the PSCs, the public service commissions? Just kind of describe the process of litigation with the utility. So
far we've been able to avoid prosecution with these utilities. Utilities, and once they got a look at our patent positions and our approach to being able to do business with them and partner up with them, they were very accommodating. And so we now find ourselves in a situation where we've settled away these 4 majors, licensed them to continue using our technologies, and we're working with them hand in hand to improve that. I see that as a business-first approach that will work well for the industry, work well for us, and generate great long-term enterprise value. The only litigation that I would consider that would possibly be going forward is somebody who does not agree with that position, as the initial 4 folks have. But we'll just have to see where it goes. If we need to litigate, we will. But that's a long-term, expensive process that we would rather avoid unless necessary. And I think our commercial options and opportunities that we will be presenting will be very well received. If the first 4 is any indication of that, I think we're in great position moving forward. And we will be doing so and discussing that in more detail as the first quarter goes on.
We have a question from the audience on your patents, and they just want to know how long the patents last for the sorbent technology.
Sure. There's a suite of patents, 60 odd patents in place, covering US, Canada, Europe, Southeast Asia. The particular patents that we utilize so far in the US have anything from 5 to 6 years right up to 17 years of coverage, and there's a combination of patents that we use to explain our position here in the US. So we've got good tenure on our patent package, such that we very much expect that we'll be able to establish good relationships over the next few years. And we very much expect, Michael, that once we get in a plant and start working with the operators, they will very much take to what we can bring to the table to improve their operations. And we're hoping that communications in this new year will be very favorable towards a commercial solution with the other folks that are still using the technologies unlicensed.
We've got a new president today who's very much an environmental president. Is there any chance that some of the emission standards will be changed, reduced even, or increased even more, and that could create a possibility, an opportunity?
We think that the environment politically is very pro-environmental. As an environmental technologies company, we see that as a big opportunity for us going forward. I think being in the green space, which we very much are a green company, a technology company that improves emissions, I think we are very well positioned at this point to see some significant growth. Some of the initiatives that we started a couple of years ago will play very well into what's expected to be a atmosphere of improved environmental controls going forward.
Well, that's a good summary sentence, and maybe that's a good point to kind of put a stop to this. I appreciate your time today and presenting at our conference, and definitely keep an eye on next Wednesday's press release and look for updates there.
Yeah, and if your folks would like to listen in, we'd very much like to have them and entertain questions as well. And on behalf of Midwest Energy Emissions, Michael, I want to thank you and Noble for inviting us today.
All right, thank you.